G'day folks and welcome to the Encounters Down Under podcast. I'm your host Anthony Goodall and I invite guests to the show to share their amazing encounters with aliens and UFOs. If you or someone you know has had an encounter down under or anywhere in the world for our new segment Encounters Unbound, please get in touch with me via the Encounters Down Under Facebook page or email at australianUFOsightings@outlook.com.au. Be sure to join the Encounters Down Under Facebook page and YouTube channel where you can also get involved during the live stream interviews, sharing your thoughts and opinions during the live show. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, don't forget to give us a rating and review on your favourite listening platform. But anyway, that's enough from me. Let's get into what you've been waiting for. Kick back and relax with your favourite beverage and enjoy the show. This episode is available to view on our YouTube channel, so be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with your thoughts on the episode. G'day folks and welcome to another episode of Encounters Down Under. Aaron joins us on this episode to talk about a brief encounter seeing a strange object in the sky and was even able to look at it through a telescope. But what he had seen left him intrigued as he could see strange features and believes it could have been a craft of some kind. So please welcome to the show, Aaron. Yeah, Aaron, how you going, mate?
Good, man. How are you, Anthony?
Going good, mate. Thanks for joining me, mate. It's been a while since we've had a bit of a chat here, and you've been trying to get you on there for a little while now. And it's about time we got you. Like, we're a little bit unprepared. Like, you know, you sort of come in last minute, but, you know, we're working through it, and it's just great to have you on, mate, finally.
Oh, happy to be on, and yeah, finally made it on, which is fantastic, and really nice to actually be on here chatting with you. So there you go.
Yeah, that's fantastic, mate. Look, now you've had some sort of what some would consider really bizarre experiences there, and mate, look, run us through what you've experienced over your lifetime. Like, they seem really bizarre, but like it's really curious and interesting at the same time. So, mate, by all means, tell us your stories.
Okay, so I'm going to keep this separate to my stories. I've obviously written a book and everything else. So, but in relation to you know, phenomenon in the sky and all this sort of other business, there was one particular incident that stood out. Now we're probably talking around 8 years ago. That was in the Narre Warren South area. So we'd bought my eldest a telescope for his birthday, and we're at the front one night having a little bit of a muck around with it. And we pointed up, we noticed that there was a spot probably a little bit left and down to the moon. So we've got the moon, all right, and then next to that we've got another really, really bright spot. And in between there, it appeared that there was something off. So we pointed it around there. And as I've looked through the eyepiece, it was like all blurry. And to give you an idea, it almost looked like looking at a tea tree dish. So when you look at one of those petri dishes, you know, in a science experiment, and you can see like little germs and stuff like that running around that, you know, was a little bit blurry and out of focus. So immediately I thought, okay, I need to check the eyepiece. So I've taken it out, given it a little bit of a rub, and I've placed it back in. So from there again, had another look, and I'm like, no, it's the same thing. Okay, there's obviously an issue with the lens, right? What's going on? Tried it again. Let's try one of the other ones. So we've got 3 different type of lenses, and they're reasonably good quality lenses, so there's nothing to do with the optics itself. We've taken it out, and I've replaced it for another one because, you know, I'm thinking, all right, whatever it is. We've put that in, same thing. Okay, so I'm still getting the same blurred effects, lines. So I've taken that out, cleaned it, same thing. From there, basically, not knowing what was happening, I've pointed it up towards the moon. Now, as soon as we got on the moon, all right, you could see everything was perfectly in focus. It was not a problem with the lens or anything else, right? So from there, I've gone back and I've pointed it down to the same spot, and we're having the same problem. So I was with my ex-partner at the time, and I've said to her, can you please come in here and just see what you're seeing through the lens? So she's had a look through the lens, and she noticed that there was it was blurry, same sort of thing, okay, the whole petri dish thing. And I've said to her, what are you seeing? She goes, well, not a lot, it's blurry. And I said to her, so does that look like it's blurry? I said, but does it look like you know, something you'd see in a petri dish, like little germs? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, does it look a little bit more like writing? And she said, you know, it could do. So she's removed herself, and we've asked the eldest, whose telescope it was, to come in, have a quick look, right? What are you seeing through the lens? And it was the same thing, okay? So all 3 of us are noticing that there's the entire lens. So we're not looking at a field of view with something distorted in the middle. We're looking at the entire field of view, all right, through the entire eyepiece was distorted. basically, the best way to describe what we were looking at was a blurred picture that looked like germs running around a tea tree dish, right? But on further observation, it appeared to sort of like become a little bit sharper. And what I got the impression, it basically looked like, what was the word? I used it before and I've forgotten now. I've gone...
what was it? Hieroglyphs?
Hieroglyphs, that's it. Yeah. So it basically looked like hieroglyphs, okay? So almost like an egg shape. Best way I could describe it to you was like an egg shape. So you've got like different craft and different things. So we're looking up going, what are we looking at, okay? You've got the crafts that are long and cylindrical. You've got the cigar ones. You've got, you know, all this sort of stuff. And I actually had a cross-reference last time you guys put up a list and, you know, check things online.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've had a little bit of a look, and it was basically like a circle one, but more like an egg shape, okay? And it basically appeared to have hieroglyphs on it, translucent hieroglyphs that is not like somebody painted it, but almost like see-through. So I'm looking at this thing that almost looked like it was trying to cover itself. You could see sort of through it, like it had some sort of a, you know, cloaking or wasn't completely there, like it was supposed to be translucent. But in my opinion, if you ask me, it looked like it could have been hieroglyphs that appeared that they could have been either very similar to the Jewish alphabet or the Russian alphabet along those sort of lines. So it was really, really interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, mate. Like what we were talking before there, like you sort of made mention too that like anyone who is aware of like astronomy, that you actually have to follow and adjust the telescope every few seconds there to go and keep the actual object in view. And that is something that you mentioned that you didn't even have to do.
Yeah, so when we've actually brought it back to frame so we could see, you know, the blurriness again, normally what would happen is if we point that telescope at the moon, all right, and we're looking at a particular crater, normally that crater will go out of view, all right, because everything's, you know, moving around in space and whatever it is in the earth and, you know, so on and so forth. Everything would move out of picture. But when we had it there probably, it would have been for a good 10 to 15 minutes. We kept it in the same spot and we checked and it was in the exact same spot. So that's extremely interesting too, because it would almost, we'll say it almost appear like, it certainly wasn't on the lens, okay, because we'd tried to clean it and we'd moved to focus on something else. So it didn't appear that there was a problem with the lens or any of the lenses at all. So it almost appeared that whatever it was there was just sitting there in the same spot, exactly where we had the telescope pointed.
Yeah.
There was nothing in a close field of view that we could see.
Yeah, it sort of made me think that this might be something that's possibly in the atmosphere there, as like, you know, you're saying it's not following the rotation of you're not having to adjust the telescope there to keep it in line with the rotation of the sky. So for me, I feel like it might be something that's getting inside the actual atmosphere, you know, at a fair distance, and it could be out of focus there because your telescope's not picking up because it's only meant for built for long distance objects. That makes sense.
Yeah,
and look, it's a possibility.
Absolutely possible. So you've always got things. I always look at things. So I did a Cert 4 in teaching, assessing, accrediting, and training small business groups, as mentioned before. So range of variables is something, you know, that I'm reasonably good taking things into account. The work I handed over to our teacher said, you know, he goes, the best work I've ever seen. He actually took some of my work over to Western Australia and revamped the mining industry back a while ago. His name was John. So it could be due to, you know, a lot of different things. It could have been something that was inside the atmosphere. Could have been, you know, a phenomenon. It could have been something due to the universe's rotation in conjunction with the Earth's positioning and other bits and pieces that, you know, is bounced off a shadow, or something else has happened that just, you know, happened to affect lensing at the time or whatever it was. It certainly didn't appear from the naked eye. It certainly did appear that it could have been, how do I say? It didn't appear to be as far back as the moon. Okay, like up in that sort of thing. It appeared to be a little bit closer. You could sort of make something out, but it didn't appear to be like it was too close. It certainly wasn't cobwebs or something flying around or anything like that. Could it have been a craft? Absolutely. Could it have been, you know, some sort of a technology that's military technology? It could have been a whole list of things. I suppose what makes this story a little bit different to, you know, the common stories is seeing, how do I say, almost like translucent horror, what appeared to be hieroglyphs written on the side or along the shape of the object, it almost appeared that it like not communicating, but it had something written on it. So just from looking at it through there, I suppose that's the really, really interesting part. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I still sort of feel like whatever it might have been, yeah, just close enough there where you are able to, capture a bit of detail there with the focus. Like obviously, it's not going to get the entire. Let's say it is a craft, for example. It's not
Sure.
going to get that shape because of the light that's reflecting off it, or whatever light it's using there isn't bright enough to kind of sort of put the distortion of the object itself. But for some unknown reason, or you're able to see some sort of writing of sorts, if that makes sense. Like, I'm speculating here.
That's an interesting
But
one. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you
I
see
know.
people see stuff in the sky all the time. So, yeah. Give me a moment.
Sure.
Yeah. You often see interesting stuff in the sky. All right, but
Yeah.
I'd actually obviously seeing something that appeared like it had a hieroglyph on it. Sort of like takes it to another level. So I'm sitting there thinking, I've seen some interesting and strange stuff in the sky. I've never seen something. Normally, when you're looking for UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. So these are things that can be caused due to particular phenomenon, whether they come from Earth. One theory is that a lot of the UFOs that people are seeing are actually coming from the ground, not from space. That's one theory, particularly in the ocean. And NASA and the UN, all these people are looking into all these type of different things. So could it have been a phenomenon? Absolutely. You can't discount it as being a phenomenon. The sort of phenomenon, that has something that looks particularly like a hieroglyph on it, could also fit into it being a phenomenon, whether it's universal conjunctions, reflections of things that are on the Earth, and so on and so forth. So it could sort of fit into that category, but also can't discount it for actually being something that was quite possibly there. Whatever it was definitely visible to us anyway. So yeah, it was very, very interesting. Did I see an object? No, not necessarily. So again, I couldn't at any time see anything that was in a field of view that was an object within that spectrum. Okay, so I couldn't see anything that was a craft, but I do know what I saw was particularly unusual. And certainly unexplainable.
Yeah. No, it's
So,
like,
amazing.
you mentioned that it was observed for about 15 minutes. Like, did you observe it after that as
Yeah,
well? Or like, how long did the whole encounter sort of last?
We went inside.
Okay.
So, normally speaking, in the space of a couple of minutes. So if you're pointing a telescope at a particular spot on the moon, as an example, and you come back a couple of minutes later, it changes. Okay, so it rotates, at a certain speed. We stayed for a couple of minutes. Now, after a few minutes, I've got the ex-partner and the son to come back and have another look, and we were still all looking at the same thing. And we hung around for about 15 minutes. From our point of view, particularly from my point of view, it was clearly long enough to say, okay, whatever it is there is certainly not rotated. It's either still sitting in the exact same spot, visible to us in the exact same spot, which, was an unusual phenomenon, at least considering that there was nothing on the lens. And yeah, by that stage, realistically speaking, I thought, we could be out here for another hour. There's sort of no point after that stage staying out for longer because we already know what we're seeing is unusual. So we were quite happy with that. And we disappeared back inside.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Because I was going to say, like for 15 minutes, if people who have seen planes landing with their landing lights there coming towards you, that's their landing lights probably may last about 5 minutes before they've gotten to the ground. Plus, not to mention that it's actually moving. So like,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
plane landing in the distance there. Venus or like Jupiter coming up from over the horizon there, or one of the other stars. It's kind of the same thing. Like they eventually move over the horizon or up in the sky high, depending on which way where they're positioned. So you can definitely rule out stars by all means. So that's two of the major bigger questions there of asking that one. Like planes, stars. It just leaves the question of what the hell was it that was sitting there stationary for 15 minutes?
Hieroglyphs. Look, I mean, it would just have to be speculation, really. It could be 1,000 things. There's many, many different theories. Theories from people came from Mars, came to Earth. There's literally 100,000 different, almost an infinite amount of theories out there as to what is it, what makes the world go around, stars, the heavens, the universe, and everything else. Me personally, I think that's probably one of, life's beautiful secrets in that respect. So I've obviously got, a particular point of view that might be different to a lot of people's, particular points of view. From the way I see it is, the sky is a very interesting place. Whether you look at that being the sky, the heavens, this or that, there's stars, there's planets, there's a lot of different stuff going on. And realistically speaking, everything from every source all around the place is speculation. And whether that's, from my opinion, whether that's, from NASA or from this one or from that one, it really is an open subject that I don't think a lot of people know about. As you go higher and higher up, obviously people have, more clearance to look into more things and discuss more things and throw more things around. And, generally speaking, they throw some peanuts down to that and it comes down sort of thing. Yeah. I guess it's the age-old question, like some people believe in religion, some people believe that there's aliens and UFOs, some people believe in, but yeah, no, look, as for what I saw that particular night, it was certainly fascinating. It was something that I didn't think should have been there. Absolutely, for sure, and it certainly was. So it's an interesting one. I won't get into what I speculate because it's all speculation. Had I have seen,
if you want to speculate, mate, it's fine. Like, look, there's no real wrong answers really when it comes to speculations. If you have a thought of what you might have possibly seen, like by all means, like I'm sure people would like to hear your opinions.
No, I'm just not. So I won't. Do you know what I mean? Like, I won't get into it because I just won't. But yeah, no, certainly interesting.
It does. It still brings you back to like the age-old question of what the hell is hanging around in our atmospheres that we want to know. Like, as you're saying, like NASA's coming out now, like they're investigating into this sort of thing. We've had, the Americans coming out with their sort of stuff. It's been long overdue.
They've got disclosure. They've got the Oh no, it's interesting. Look, I mean, they've got the whole disclosure, and they've got which is something I've set up, Disclosure AG. They've got the Arrow, which is AARO. Area that looks into a whole lot of different things, put an end on it. That's my name, which is awesome. So I almost feel like I'm, fully involved with it. But, there's a lot of different stuff, I suppose, coming out at the moment, which is just an interesting thing. I'm obviously not here to, I don't want to kill any debate on either side. I think it's a fascinating subject. Obviously tune in and, watch some of the stuff on your program, and you're obviously a nice guy. That's why I've wanted to come on and have a quick discussion with you. My opinion on the whole thing in regards to that is probably about 99.9% of what you see in footage and reports and stuff like this might be a UFO's unidentified flying object, but depending who it's unidentified depends on sort of like what level you are. The real question that I would always take into consideration if I was having a look at, flying saucers and alien life and all this sort of other stuff is, can we match the technology? So if I see something automatically that we can replicate, whether we know that was us or we don't know that was us, but if we even have something close to a technology like that on Earth, I would always discount it as being unidentified, because you're normally looking for things that I suppose aren't of human nature or are far beyond what people would be capable of. Like that, is it the Uma rock? They reckon they tracked that and it's come like that. So that's come in, it's changed directions, it's done a hook turn, it's come up to the traffic lights, it's slowed down, it's done a lot of different things apparently. So when they're having a look at things like that, they can say, okay, that's not normally what we would consider to be a typical trait for somebody who's for an object coming in from space and so on and so forth. Whereas vast majority of the stuff that they're looking at and getting into, it's a lot of the technology they have, basically, is what I can say to you. And I know there's a lot of research on stuff coming actually out of the ground and from the oceans and aerial phenomenon as opposed to objects that are flying, because some of it could be, or some of it obviously is phenomenon. So 99.9% of it you can automatically discard. as being just because somebody doesn't know about it doesn't mean somebody else doesn't know what's happening with it. And there are very, very, very few instances where people can actually have a look at the stuff and say, okay, there's really something here that doesn't appear to be mimicking anything that we have or we're capable of being able to project. And you got to remember too that anything that they project to have, they've had it for 50 years. All right. So hypothetically, and if you're going to have a discussion on it, anything at the moment you say, okay, we can now go Mach 9 with missiles. Well, if you see something flying X speed, or depending on whatever it is, they have cloaking devices they have. So sort of like, yeah, it's a very, very, it needs to be very obvious. Like I think the Uma thing, obviously, that's come in would be an obvious one that drew a lot of speculation. And are there things that, they genuinely don't know about? Absolutely, there are, but they're a very, very, very small amount. And they're things that the US and, other people aren't aware about are out there. And there are things that, that people aren't aware of, but they are a small amount. Compared to the big number of things that you see. So, every 10,000 that you see, there might be a couple of, one or two legitimate ones in there that need a lot of investigating. And that's exactly, I suppose, why they're doing it at the moment. And that's what makes it a fascinating time for people who are into the stars and the skies and the UFOs. So, even we'll call it the big space dogs are coming out at the moment, and they're saying that, well, we're looking into it. This is something we're actively having a look at, and we're actively collecting, this information off people, and we're setting up agencies to delve further into it. So yeah, it's very interesting time.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
In your regard, yeah. I remember when I was a lot younger, my grandparents lived in, was it Narre Warren? And, there was always talk about, one night that, a couple of hundred neighbours went out and they thought they saw a saucer and it parked in the fields, but nobody ever spoke about it. There was an article in the paper because they had papers back then and everything else that was in print. And nobody talked about these sort of things, and it sort of like disappeared, but they all sort of remember it. But so there you go. That's my 20 cents worth.
Yeah, no, look, it all makes sense. Like, well, it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense. Like, as into like what you're saying, like they're finally coming into it. But to me, it's what I was saying. I mean, by what I was saying was, I'm frustrated by it. Is like they've got 70 years or nearly 100 years worth of this information and detail of strange objects flying around us, and it's taken this long for them to go and get serious about it and start being a bit more disclosing about it. To say, like it's something I feel is well and truly overdue, and that's the thing that frustrates me because, like, we've got so much evidence there. We've got so much public evidence as well. People are reporting their sightings there. You have military personnel reporting their sightings, well, not all of them, but because of the whole stigma that's still attached to this whole topic.
Sure.
They're too frightened to go and talk about it, and even the general public who have had encounters there are still too scared to sort of talk about it or even come forward with it.
Another phenomenon too, you've got to put everything in the mix. So another phenomenon too is sometimes what people are seeing isn't actually what's presenting. So it's like looking through lenses. So not everybody's eyes work the same. Not everybody's cognitive function works the same. Not everybody's perception of things appear the same as well. So sometimes there are other factors closer to home with some things that people are seeing. But I'm not suggesting that but you've always got to take every single thing into account.
Absolutely.
So go back now. We've had planes for the Wright brothers invented the plane. This space of around about 100-year period. So it's sort of new technology. And when people sort of say look how far technology's come to me, like when I hear that, I sort of do give it a bit of a laugh because we're still sort of like stuck on the exact same technology. They've just improved it. So, a guy came out a while ago and designed technology to fly. They've put a pair of wings on an engine. Now, pretty much everything we've done from there is just wings and an engine. We can't kid ourselves. Do you know what I mean? So for all this advancement, they say, gee, we're so smart and we've done this and that. And the reality of it is they're still working off the same genius idea that one person had 100 years ago. They haven't come up with hype. No, do you know what I mean? Like, and if they do, they're certainly not telling you about it. So I'm not suggesting that nobody has any other technology or anything like that. But we're still, how do I say, building ideas off the backs of geniuses from, a century ago. When it comes, to planes, to flight, to rockets, for example, like a rocket is still a rocket, right? It's the exact same technology. So they get these fuselages, they put some fuel, they do this, they do that, they point the boosters, and it's the same process, you know. So now we've got Elon Musk sending massive payloads into space, but we're still working off a very primitive technology, which is Earth. There's no difference. So realistically, like, things have come a long way, you know, since they invented planes. And, you know, you could always obviously imagine that as they're going through better versions and better things, I don't necessarily want everybody to know what they do have in relation to disclosing their technology, because you've got other people, you know, in the world that they don't want to disclose their technology to their own people and whatever. So that probably hopefully answers, from my perspective, answers your question a little bit about why haven't they been forthcoming and stuff like that. I think now we've reached a little bit of a crescendo where a lot more of the information's out there, and, you know, somebody's probably just turned around to Donald Trump a couple of years ago and said, release the files, the disclosure file. So there, that brings us to here, I think. So, like, for me, it's an interesting topic, but I think we're still all working off the same technology that's, you know, quite outdated, and there's very, very few new technologies out there. I could only imagine there'd be a lot of different ways to travel from point A to point B, and, you know, burning things is not probably the only one, because that's what we work off, combustible engines. You know, there's no magnetism, there's a whole list of different ways that you can, you know, move objects and stuff like that. So anyway, that's just a little bit of food for thought on that subject anyway. But that's probably what's with it, you know. When they sort of don't know a lot about a subject and they start to get good at it, they become a little bit concerned, well, who else is going to know this? Who are they going to go and tell this about our technology, you know, and so on and so forth. But I think now they've sort of like reached the prime. They understand, well, technology is sort of like a lot of what you'd consider to be old technology nowadays has probably been surpassed with, you know, some newer technology. And they're probably a little bit, you know, more freed up about speaking to it and actually interested in learning more about the subject and gathering some data, as opposed to telling people what to do because they're fearful of it. So this is another way to look at it, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, look, there's lots of good ways to look at it. And, like, every question doesn't really have a wrong answer to a certain degree, you know? Like, why have they been so reluctant to go and share technologies that they've figured out over the years? Look, you know, some person the wrong person get it in their hands and, you know, try and world destruction or something like that. And I understand that sort of perspective.
Yeah, I won't go too far into. Yeah,
no, that's all right. But it makes you think, though, like, had they released the technology that, like, say, anti-gravity, you know, they even advertised, like, it was in the 30s or 40s or somewhere around that time, or maybe in the 50s, they were advertising for vehicles that could fly in the air, you know, like the anti-gravity sort of vehicles. But it was an actual literal advertisements. Whether they were hoaxes or not, I don't know. But, like, they were nearly there to go and really start releasing this sort of technology, but for some reason they pulled back and go, nah, we're making, I don't know, maybe making too much money on the fossil fuels, and, you know, we're going back into the car industry sort of stuff. Like, I don't know. It's so many questions that you want to answer. That's frustrating. But it just makes you wonder, like, how far could we have been today had they allowed a lot of the technology out, instead of knocking people on the head there, going, no, we can't have that out there.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a really interesting point you raise. Certainly, yeah. I don't. Yeah. So, yeah, I tend to agree. The world is not always an open society. I mean, we've sort of come in the last 100 years. Human behaviour, we'll just call it human behaviour in the last 100 years has developed. How do I say, more along the lines of what you're suggesting? So, if you go back to even just look at a short-term person, you know, I'm 45 years old now, and I know you're sitting there thinking he doesn't look a day over 25. Right. So at 45 now, I remember when we went back to school. Now, nowadays you can't, you know, hit other people's kids and everything else, okay? But, you know, back then I think they still used to strap children from grade 2 and upwards. And they literally banned the strap at our school. I think they banned it statewide the very year I hit grade 2. And I remember that because we weren't looking forward to getting the. Now, if we rewind a little bit further back than that, you know, say go back 100, 120 years ago, they used to hang naughty kids up in a basket at the top of the ceiling in a hallway in a public place because they were making too much noise. And if they told it to be quiet and stay still, it needed to do that. Otherwise, it was going to suffer the consequences. So, you know, go back a couple of 100 years, we used to burn people at stakes. Not we, sorry, humans. Okay, so it's a catch-22, right? So the presumption that people, intelligent entities, to the point that we're discussing there, is not always a give me because, and then that's not to be, it's just, the way that I see things sometimes. So it's not always a necessity to think that people should be like that. Have they come a long way in the past, 40, 50, 100 years? Absolutely. We're, far removed from what a Stone Age would look like and so on and so forth. So, and you say in that respect, evolutionary. Yeah, so just a few things to consider. I think they've probably come quite a long way, from reluctance of talking about anything to putting some power in people's hands to leave things up for discussion. Because realistically speaking, I think just a couple of short years ago, had you have been on here talking, you might have drawn the wrong attention. And it's a sort of subject now that even the government's admitting they're coming out. They're looking into space. They're looking into the stars, and they're actively getting involved in bringing that sort of stuff forward, which is a good thing. Why not a few years ago? Maybe they weren't asked or told to. I don't know. I'd presume. But yeah, look, we could have been a lot further along.
Yeah, that's right.
We could also be a lot further behind.
It's a big control thing too. Governments themselves, they love control. They love the high mighty power and how they want to roll with it. But to me, it's just a big control.
Absolutely. My battery's at about 6%, so I'm gonna stun for a little bit longer. But if I'll let you know a couple of minutes before. But look, with that, so the way I see it is we've gone from, how do I say? So we've got state government now. Okay, so we've got, it's called the concept of state and country body. From there, they look that they want to progress things to a one world or whatever it is. So if we go prior to what we have now, which is state controlled and state run, all right, then we're going to go back to kings and queens would be the previous step. Okay, so everything was ruled by kings and queens, and we had a different sort of setup. Now from there, obviously, funnily enough, okay, 22.6% of the world is still ruled by kings and queens. And I know that because I'm trying to put in for something. So it's a different subject. 22% of the world is still ruled by kings and queens. Now, if we go even further back than that, we have religion. And if we go further back than that, there's other examples. So, Christianity goes back 2,000 years, and we go Judaism 3,600 years. If we go back further than that, if we believe what we're told about carbon dating and other bits and pieces, we go to the Egyptians, who again run a different model and so on and so forth. So, yeah, it's quite interesting. I'm looking at my screen now, and it's kind of all dark. So I've gone down to 5% battery. Right. You can still see me good from your end.
Yeah, that's right. So the point I was trying to get at, though, with the world being so, or at least the westernized society being so controlled, and if they allowed technology to go the way it was supposed to go, then we could have advanced as well as interacting with beings of alien nature or whatever you want to call them. We could have been so far ahead in a much better human race in that nature if we had the interactions there with these races of other beings, or control. To me, it's just we've been stamped down, so we can't interact all this. It's why? But we could have been well and truly better off.
Yeah, look, with me, I'm fairly open-minded. I've seen a lot of strange things, to say the very, very least, and obviously, with my book, I explain all that sort of stuff and whatnot. Government control, it's a little bit like this, okay? So we've got an AI, okay? So person A comes out and he says, hey, AI is great. AI is going to save you time to do X, Y, and Z. We're going to implement AI on everything we do, okay? So that would be a good idea, because once we've got AI out there, all these doors are going to open, all these different things are going to happen. And the other guy comes out, and then the people who are working on AI, who invented it, they turn around and say you should never have released it. It wasn't made for this purpose. It's not actually going to work the way you think it does. So we're generally talking about pools of information, who controls the world. I mean, at one stage or another, Hitler controlled part of the world, and it didn't end up very well on other stages. So, I say it's that constant battle between, light and dark. Aliens and UFOs, some people believe that they're entities, or, some people believe that we're not alone. Some people believe in religion. Some people believe in, I think it's a fascinating subject, history, religion, all that sort of stuff. To me, I find it a very, very interesting subject, just from my point of view. Government control and stuff like that. Look, I think sometimes, there's things that people necessarily don't need to know, and I'm going to put that to you in an absolutely constructive way. But then there's, I think, also times that, they're not given enough credit. So we free society, living in a free society, I mean, is always a good thing. Checks and balances, I suppose. There's a I don't want to say too much because myself personally, my story, I do want to go mainstream with it and everything else, and it will. I'm down to about 1%.
That's right, mate. Give us, mate, give us a quick shout out if people want to talk to you, like if you're contactable.
Listen, if you'd like to get onto my page on Facebook, it's a Disclosure AG, so A.G. That's on Facebook. Disclosure A.G. You can look me up. My details are on there. Coming up soon, hopefully I'll be doing some meet and greet services and some pieces. And if you want to follow my page.
All right, and I think so, mate. Look, mate, thanks very much, mate. Much appreciated, mate. It's great having you on, and mate, we'll try and get you on in the future there and have a bit of more of a chat and go from there, mate. But yeah, well, we lost him. Dear. Oh, anyway, guys, look, that's the end of the first one there. We couldn't get him back quick enough there to go and say thank you very much. But, thanks again for joining me tonight so far. I hope you enjoyed the content so far. And that will do it, folks, for this episode. I hope you enjoyed the show. And don't forget, if you or someone you know has had an encounter, to please get in touch with me to be featured on the podcast. If you're a fan of the show, you can support the podcast by purchasing some awesome merchandise that's available on our online store via the link provided in the episode description. So thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you on the next Encounter Down Under. Hooroo!